is composed satirical poetry defaming the infidels. The Prophet said, "What about the fact that I have common descent with them?" Hassan replied, "I shall take you out of them, as a hair is taken out of dough." Narrated Urwa, I started abusing Hassan in front of Aisha, whereupon she said, "Don't abuse him, for he used to defend the Prophet with his poetry." Volume 4, Book 56, number 732. Narrated by Jubair bin Mut'im. Allah's apostle said, I have 5 names. I am Muhammad and Ahmad. I am Al-Mahi, through whom Allah will eliminate infidelity. I am Al-Hashir, who will be the first to be resurrected, the people being resurrected thereafter, and I am also Al-Aqib, that is, there will be no prophet after me. Volume 4, Book 56, number 733, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, Doesn't it astonish you how Allah protects me from the Quraish's abusing and cursing? They abuse Mudhammam and curse Mudhammam while I am Muhammad and not Mudhammam. Volume 4, Book 56, number 734, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. The Prophet said, My similitude in comparison with the other prophets is that of a man who has built a house completely and excellently, except for a place of 1 brick. When the people enter the house, they admire its beauty and say, But for the place of this brick, how splendid the house will be. Volume 4, Book 56, number 735, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, My similitude in comparison with the other prophets before me is that of a man who has built a house nicely and beautifully, except for a place of 1 brick in a corner. The people go about it and wonder at its beauty but say, Would that this brick be put in its place? So I am that brick, and I am the last of the prophets. Volume 4, Book 56, number 736, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet died when he was 63 years old. Volume 4, Book 56, number 737, narrated by Anas. While the Prophet was in the market, a man called somebody, O Abu al-Qasim. The Prophet turned to him and said, Name yourselves after me but do not call yourselves by my kunya. Volume 4, Book 56, number 738, narrated by Jabir. The Prophet said, Name yourselves after me but do not call yourselves by my kunya. Volume 4, Book 56, number 739, narrated by Abu Huraira. Abu al-Qasim said, Name yourselves after me but do not call yourselves by my kunya. Volume 4, Book 56, number 740. Narrated by Al-Ju'aid bin Abdur Rahman. I saw As-Saib bin Yazid when he was 94 years old, quite strong and of straight figure. He said, I know that I enjoyed my hearing and seeing powers only because of the invocation of Allah's apostle. My aunt took me to him and said, O Allah's apostle, my nephew is sick, will you invoke Allah for him? So he invoked Allah for me. Volume 4, Book 56, number 741, narrated by Az-Skab bin Yazid. My aunt took me to Allah's apostle and said, O Allah's apostle, my nephew is sick. The Prophet passed his hands over my head and blessed me. Then he performed ablution and I drank the remaining water, and standing behind him, I saw the seal in between his shoulders. Volume 4, Book 56, number 742, narrated by Uqba bin al-Harith. Once, Abu Bakr offered the Asr prayer and then went out walking and saw Al-Hasan playing with the boys. He lifted him onto his shoulders and said, Let my parents be sacrificed for your sake. You resemble the Prophet and not Ali, while Ali was smiling. Volume 4, Book 56, number 743, narrated by Abu Juhayfa. I saw the Prophet and Al-Hasan resembled him. Volume 4, Book 56, number 744, narrated by Ismail bin Abi Khalid. I heard Abi Juhayfa saying, I saw the Prophet and Al-Hasan bin Ali resembled him. I said to Abu Juhayfa, Describe him for me. He said, He was white and his beard was black with some white hair. He promised to give us 13 young she-camels, but he expired before we could get them. Volume 4, Book 56, number 745, narrated by Wab Abu Juhayfa as-Sawai. I saw the Prophet and saw some white hair below his lower lip above the chin. Volume 4, Book 56, number 746. Narrated by Hariz bin Uthman, that he asked Abdullah bin Busr, that is the companion of the Prophet, Did you see the Prophet when he was old? He said, He had a few white hairs between the lower lip and the chin. Volume 4, Book 56, number 747, narrated by Rabia bin Abi Abdur Rahman. I heard Anas bin Malik describing the Prophet saying, He was of medium height amongst the people, neither tall nor short, he had a rosy color, neither absolutely white nor deep brown. His hair was neither completely curly nor quite lank. Divine inspiration was revealed to him when he was 40 years old. He stayed 10 years in Mecca, receiving the divine inspiration, and stayed in Medina for 10 more years. When he expired, he had scarcely 20 white hairs in his head and beard. Rabia said, I saw some of his hairs, and it was red. When I asked about that, I was told that it turned red because of scent. Volume 4, Book 56, number 748, narrated by Anas. Allah's apostle was neither very tall nor short, neither absolutely white nor deep brown. His hair was neither curly nor lank. Allah sent him as an apostle when he was 40 years old. Afterwards he resided in Mecca for 10 years and in Medina for 10 more years. When Allah took him unto him there was scarcely 20 white hairs in his head and beard. Volume 4, Book 56, number 749, narrated by Al-Bara. Allah's apostle was the handsomest of all the people, and had the best appearance. He was neither very tall nor short. Volume 4, Book 56, number 750, narrated by Qatada. I asked Anas, did the Prophet use to dye his hair? He said no, for there were only a few white hairs on his temples. Volume 4, Book 56, number 751, narrated by Al-Bara. The Prophet was of moderate height, having broad shoulders, long hair reaching his earlobes. Once I saw him in a red cloak and I had never seen a more handsome than him. Volume 4, Book 56, number 752, narrated by Abu Ishaq al-Bara, was asked, was the face of the Prophet as bright as a sword? He said no, but as bright as a moon. Volume 4, Book 56, number 753, narrated by Abu Juhayfa. Once Allah's apostle went to Al-Batha at noon, performed the ablution and offered a 2-rakat Zuhr prayer and a 2-rakat Asr prayer while a spear-headed stick was planted before him and the passers-by were passing in front of it. After the prayer, the people got up and held the hands of the Prophet and passed them on their faces. I also took his hand and kept it on my face, and noticed that it was colder than ice and its smell was nicer than musk. Volume 4, Book 56, number 754, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet was the most generous of all the people, and he used to become more generous in Ramadan when Gabriel met him. Gabriel used to meet him every night during Ramadan to revise the Quran with him. Allah's apostle then used to be more generous than the fast wind. Volume 4, Book 56, number 755, narrated by Aisha, that Allah's apostle came to her in a happy mood with his features glittering with joy, and said, have you not heard what the Caliph has said about Zaid and Usama? He saw their feet and remarked, these belong to each other. That is, they are father and son. Volume 4, Book 56, number 756, narrated by Abdullah bin Ka'b. I heard Ka'b bin Malik talking after his failure to join the Ghazwa of Tabuk. He said, when I greeted Allah's apostle whose face was glittering with happiness, for whenever Allah's apostle was happy his face used to glitter, as if it was a piece of the moon and we used to recognize it, that is his happiness, from his face. Volume 4, Book 56, number 757, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, I have been sent as an apostle in the best of all the generations of Adam's offspring since their creation. Volume 4, Book 56, number 758, narrated by Ibn Abbas. Allah's apostle used to let his hair hang down while the infidels used to part their hair. The people of the scriptures were used to letting their hair hang down, and Allah's apostle liked to follow the people of the scriptures in the matters about which he was not instructed otherwise. Then Allah's apostle parted his hair. Volume 4, Book 56, number 759, narrated by Abdullah bin Amr. The Prophet never used bad language, neither a fahish nor a mutafahish. He used to say, the best amongst you are those who have the best manners and character. See Hadith No. 56, B. Volume 8, Volume 4, Book 56, number 760, narrated by Aisha. Whenever Allah's apostle was given the choice of one of two matters, he would choose the easier of the two as long as it was not sinful to do so, but if it was sinful to do so, he would not approach it. Allah's apostle never took revenge over anybody, for his own sake, but he did only when Allah's legal bindings were outraged, in which case he would take revenge for Allah's sake. Volume 4, Book 56, number 761, narrated by Anas. I have never touched silk or dibaj, that is thick silk, softer than the palm of the Prophet, nor have I smelt a perfume nicer than the sweat of the Prophet. Volume 4, Book 56, number 762, narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. The Prophet was sheer than a vain virgin girl. Volume 4, Book 56, number 763, narrated by Shuba, a similar hadith, i.e., note 762, with this addition. And if he, that is the Prophet, disliked something, the sign of aversion would appear on his face. Volume 4, Book 56, number 764, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet never criticized any food presented him, but he would eat it if he liked it. Otherwise, he would leave it without expressing his dislike. Narrated by Abdullah bin Malik bin Buhayna al-Azdi. When the Prophet prostrated, he used to keep his arms so widely apart that we used to see his armpits. The sub-narrator Ibn Bukayr said, the whiteness of his armpits. Volume 4, Book 56, number 766. Narrated by Anas. Allah's apostle did not use to raise his hands in his invocations except in the istisqa, that is invoking Allah for the rain, in which he used to raise his hands so high that one could see the whiteness of his armpits. Note: it may be that Anas did not see the Prophet as raising his hands, but it has been narrated that the Prophet as used to raise his hands for invocations other than istisqa. See Hadith number 612 vol 5, and Hadith number 807 and 808 vol 2, volume 4 book 56 number 767, narrated by Abu Juhayfa. By chance I went to the Prophet at noon while he was at Al-Abta, resting in a tent. Bilal came out of the tent and pronounced the adhan for the prayer, and entering again, he brought out the water which was left after Allah's apostle had performed the ablution. The people rushed to take some of the water. Bilal again went in and brought out a spear-headed stick, and then Allah's apostle came out, as if I were now looking at the whiteness of his leg. Bilal fixed the stick, and the Prophet offered a 2-rakat Zuhr prayer and a 2-rakat Nasr prayer, while women and donkeys were passing in front of the Prophet, beyond the stick. Volume 4, Book 56, number 768. Narrated by Aisha. The Prophet used to talk so clearly that if somebody wanted to count the number of his words, he could do so. Narrated Urwa bin Az-Zubair. Aisha said to me, "Don't you wonder at Abu so-and-so who came and sat by my dwelling and started relating the traditions of Allah's apostle, intending to let me hear that, while I was performing an optional prayer. He left before I finished my optional prayer. Had I found him still there, I would have said to him, Allah's apostle never talks so quickly and vaguely as you do." Volume 4, Book 56, number 769, narrated by Abu Salama bin Abdur Rahman, that he asked Aisha, "How was the prayer of Allah's apostle in the month of Ramadan?" She replied, "He used not to pray more than 11 rakat whether in Ramadan or in any other month. He used to offer 4 rakat, let alone their beauty and length, and then 4 rakat, let alone their beauty and length. Afterwards, he would offer 3 rakat. I said, 'O Allah's apostle, do you go to bed before offering the witr prayer?' He said, 'My eyes sleep but my heart does not sleep.'" Volume 4, Book 56, number 770, narrated by Sharik bin Abdullah bin Abi Namr. I heard Anas bin Malik telling us about the night when the Prophet was made to travel from the Kaaba mosque. 3 persons, that is angels, came to the Prophet before he was divinely inspired was an apostle, while he was sleeping in Al-Masjid ul-Haram. The first of the 3 angels said, "Which of them is he?" The second said, "He is the best of them." That was all that happened then, and he did not see them till they came at another night, and he perceived their presence with his heart. For the eyes of the Prophet were closed when he was asleep, but his heart was not asleep, not unconscious. This is characteristic of all the prophets. Their eyes sleep, but their hearts do not sleep. Then Gabriel took charge of the Prophet and ascended along with him to the heaven. Volume 4, Book 56, number 771, narrated by Imran bin Hussein. That they were with the Prophet on a journey. They traveled the whole night, and when dawn approached they took a rest, and sleep overwhelmed them till the sun rose high in the sky. The first to get up was Abu Bakr. Allah's apostles used not to be awakened from his sleep, but he would wake up by himself. Umar woke up, and then Abu Bakr sat by the side of the Prophet's head and started saying, "Allahu Akbar," raising his voice till the Prophet woke up, and after traveling for a while, he dismounted and led us in the morning prayer. A man amongst the people failed to join us in the prayer. When the Prophet had finished the prayer, he asked the man, "O so-and-so, what prevented you from offering the prayer with us?" He replied, "I am Junub." Allah's apostle ordered him to perform tayammum with clean earth. The man then offered the prayer. Allah's apostle ordered me and a few others to go ahead of him. We had become very thirsty. While we were on our way, looking for water, we came across a lady, riding an animal, hanging her legs between 2 water skins. We asked her, "Where can we get water?" She replied, "Oh, there is no water." We asked, "How far is your house from the water?" She replied, "A distance of a day and a night travel." We said, "Come on to Allah's apostle." She asked, "What is Allah's apostle?" So we brought her to Allah's apostle against her will, and she told him what she had told us before, and added that she was the mother of orphans. So the Prophet ordered that her 2 water skins be brought, and he rubbed the mouths of the water skins. As we were thirsty, we drank till we quenched our thirst, and we were 40 men. We also filled all our water skins and other utensils with water, but we did not water the camels. The water skin was so full that it was almost about to burst. The Prophet then said, "Bring what foodstuff you have." So some dates and pieces of bread were collected for the lady, and when she went to her people she said, "I have met either the greatest magician or a prophet as the people claim." So Allah guided the people of that village through that lady. She embraced Islam and they all embraced Islam. Volume 4, Book 56, number 772, narrated by Anas. A bowl of water was brought to the Prophet while he was at Az-Zahra. He placed his hand in it and the water started flowing among his fingers. All the people performed ablution with that water. Qatada asked Anas, "How many people were you?" Anas replied, 300 or nearly 300. Volume 4,